From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's Just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Gut dial.
Remember, if you've got a tip for Melissa, breadcrumbs of clues in an unsolved murder, the overheard conversation at the coffee shop, the fact that it wasn't a who, but a what that put the ram in the ramalama ding-dong. Anything. Tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. And now here's your host. She loves researching a new case almost as much as she loves avocado toast, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. You know, they are kind of neck and neck. Like two of my favorite things, researching a new case and avocado toast.
I think that it might even be a little bit of an advantage right now for the avocado toast.
It might be, simply because I've discovered onion powder.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I have garlic powder and onion powder, a little bit of lemon or lime juice. I like lemon. My friend Emily, Tipster Emily, likes lime. I'm going to try that next, but... It's interesting that you mentioned the tips you overhear at a coffee shop, because I developed my love of avocado toast from a local coffee house called the Bodie Leaf here in Santa Clarita.
That's right.
And they have other locations in Southern California, and Orange County, I think, is where they started. But they're a family-run business. A couple of partners and their spouses started the business, and I am madly in love with their stuff. I know producer Mark likes stuff that tastes different than I like.
You can have all of it.
I'm gonna. I bought 3 giant avocados today at the store. So the Bodie Leaf makes avocado toast that I can't exactly replicate. And they have been so kind, and they have given me the recipe, and I'm not really great at figuring it out. But I kept thinking... One thing I kept missing was onion powder, which I really didn't. I had garlic powder, and I had salt, and I had pepper, and I had lime or lemon and blah, blah. But I didn't have onion powder. And I bought some, and, you know, I'm not like great in the kitchen. I don't know a whole lot about shit like that. But I bought some, and I was like, oh, this.
That was it.
Yes.
That was the missing ingredient?
Yes.
I didn't even know they made onion powder.
I wasn't sure myself. But I have 2 things I need to say. One is for the intro for gut dialing. I just gut dialed my BFF, Angela. I was taking my phone out of my hoodie, out of the pocket of my hoodie, and I hit the button where you like video chat with someone. And so I hung up really quickly and messaged her, and I said, I'm really sorry. You know, I was just taking my phone out, and I hit a button. And she said, I love that you butt dialed me. And I'm like, well, actually it was in the front of my body. So it was, I gut dialed you.
I didn't know what you were referring to.
Now you do. I have invented a new thing. It's gut dialing. And it wasn't actually, look, my gut can do a lot of, you know, weird things like, you know, press buttons and dial people, but it wasn't actually my gut. It was actually my hand, because I was taking my phone out of my hoodie, but it just so happened to be in the pocket in the front. Producer Mark gut opens his trunk a lot.
Yeah, I do.
He keeps his key fob in his pocket, jeans pocket, and bends over, and I'll be outside, and I'll be like, hey, did you need me to close your trunk?
Yeah. My gut actually does do things.
Our guts are very talented.
No, my gut is just really big, and when I sit down and I have my key fob in my pocket, and I bend over to, like, you know, yeah. pull my socks up or do something, it just hits the key, and yep. Oh my.
Yeah, the trunk is open a lot, and thank goodness you don't keep like diamonds and, you know, money and jewels in your trunk.
Yeah.
A couple times neighbors have texted us, hey, your trunk's open. I'm like, motherfuck. So yeah, so now I feel like we're branching out. We're very talented. You can open a trunk with your gut, and I can video chat my best friend.
Well, you were doing it with your hand. Now, come on.
I was. Yeah. I touched something, I don't know what. Which, by the way, Tipsters, I have a iPhone 12 now. And I will tell you, knock wood, my brothers and sisters, it has not disappointed me yet. I am hoping that my weird, you know, chemistry is hanging in there. Because I had an iPhone 11, which I thought was going to be great. And I hated it from minute one. And it's like, well, it's too expensive. You can't take it back. And it was too big for me. And I hated it. And it had as producer Mark will attest, it had weird shit that happened to it all the time.
Beyond weird shit. Beyond weird shit.
Yeah. So I ended up taking it back to the Apple store a couple times. They're like, oh, it was a software glitch. And I'm like, oh, does that happen often? They're like, it happens. I think it's what they say.
You know what that means?
You're an alien.
No,
yeah.
it doesn't.
You, madam, are an alien.
Yeah.
And I have wonderful neighbors who have directed me toward something fascinating called like starseed children or something, where you find out what planet you're originally from.
Oh, I see.
And it's disturbing, like Andromeda or something. Or
oh my,
I'm not sure. I got that wrong. It begins with an A.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I know one of the things it begins with a P, one begins with an L. One of my neighbors was saying her mom, a Palladian, I think. The only thing I want to make sure I'm not is a Kardashian, or if you watch Star Trek, a Cardassian. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yeah, I came downstairs and producer Mark was watching some Star Trek Next Generation, maybe something like that.
Yes, I watched the entire series from start to finish.
Yes, he did, and that he's already seen. And I was like, are they talking about the Kardashians? And Mark's like, no, it's Cardassian. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know. I don't know about that shit. But anyway,
Cardassians are not as nice as the Kardashians.
You want to bet?
Well, they might give each other a run
I think
for the
it's
money.
a run for the money. Yeah, totally. So,
right.
yeah. Anyway, I'm apparently probably a starseed something or other, which makes sense why I blow out a lot of things.
I hope your new iPhone isn't, sitting in the other room now listening to
plotting.
This, going,
yeah, it's rubbing its little hands together.
I've got her fooled.
I gotta be honest. I've had it for what, like 2 weeks now, and it's fine. It hasn't effed up on me.
Oh man,
I like it. It's small.
You better go get some sage after this podcast is over.
Okay, all right, because I'm saying nice things about it.
Yeah.
All right, so before we get into this case, which was recommended to us by an amazing tipster, Barkley Mom, which I had forgotten that she had told me to look at this case. And here's the thing. What she did was included in a review on Apple Podcasts, which is fine. But here's how you can send us ideas for cases you want us to cover. You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us on our tipster hotline at 832-847-7837. And while we are grateful that, you that take the time to rate or review or subscribe to the podcast, there's no us without you. So thank you for doing that. That means the world to us. You can get a hold of us on any social media platform that well, not all of them, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Any ideas?
Yeah, don't try it on MySpace.
Yeah, I'm going to say don't use your Commodore 64 to get in touch with me because I won't get that message. Probably not. I don't think so. So yes, Barkley Mom suggested this case, and I feel bad that I'd forgotten it because it's been quite a few months. But I'm grateful that she suggested it because it's a very interesting one, heartbreaking and interesting. So before we get to the heartbreaking one, I want to explain sometimes you need to embrace the really good news. And there's big, wonderful good news. And if you are a follower of any sort of true crime stories, you probably are aware of these people. But Laura Frizzo and Jeremy Ogden are two amazing people that had been in law enforcement. Laura was the first female chief of police of Iron City in Michigan. Jeremy was a detective, many decades of service in Indiana, working with ATF and drug enforcement, and he was a canine trainer. He's just a fascinating guy. And these two people, meet in the worst way, where they have to team up to solve two murders. And they do. And what they do is magnificent. And if you have not had a chance to see Dead North, which was from the ID Network, a documentary series on the ID Network, I guess it ran for maybe 3 nights.
Yeah.
It's about 5 hours of programming.
Yep, it's wonderful.
It really is. And I believe you can find it on demand. maybe on like Hulu or something.
Oh, you can get it now. I think maybe even Netflix has it.
Oh,
now.
Gosh,
you can
yeah.
Get it,
I hope
you can get it at a lot of different places. But if you have the ID on
demand,
you probably get it there. But it's a really good miniseries.
It's well done, and it's very well done,
and it's surprising because it is a very gritty, awful story about an awful human being.
It is.
But it ends up as a love story, and then now that love story is even bloomed.
Yeah,
even more.
I'm gonna try not to cry. I don't want to cry, but so it aired in May of 2018, and over the Memorial Day weekend, and I was mesmerized. They did an amazing job of showing trailers, and I'm like, oh, I'm watching that, and it's one of those things where I was like, I don't even want to tape it. I want to watch it live, as if. You have to do that now. But I did. And I was just hooked. And I fell madly in love with Laura. No offense to Jeremy. I love him too. But I really love Laura. And I'd forgotten what I did. But I guess what I did was kind of stalk her. And I messaged her on Facebook. And I was like, you're amazing. I would like to interview you on my podcast. I don't know what else to say, except you're amazing and I'm in love with you. And it took her a month. I know, shocking, surprising.
I'm sure she was like, what the hell is this?
No, she wasn't at all. She is the most approachable, down-to-earth human being on planet Earth. I just don't know how she is as good as she is an investigator, being such an open heart. She's amazing and wonderful. And I stalked her and we spoke quite a bit. And producer Mark and I happened to be in Chicago in late October, early November of 2018 he had a work conference, and I got to go with him. And I'm like, look, it's not that far. We're going to drive. We rented a car. We drove to Indiana. We got to meet Laura and Jeremy, and we just fell even more in love with them. And they're just amazing creatures. So what happened last spring, maybe April or May, Jeremy has never had a big interest in social media. And he changed his settings on his Facebook profile and it said engaged to Laura Frizzo. And it's about 8 or 9 o'clock our time, probably 11 or midnight their time in Indiana. And I text her and I'm like, what the fuck? You're engaged and you didn't tell me. She goes, oh God, what did he do? And she's like, I'm getting messages from everyone now. What did he do? And I said, he changed his status, that he's engaged to you on Facebook. And she goes, we've been engaged for a while. And I'm like, you have? I was so overwhelmed and happy for them. And then she told me, she's like, this is a secret. And I wasn't able to say anything until now. And she didn't even tell her kids, but they were getting married last year. June 6th, my birthday of 2020 in Italy, because Laura is Italian. And I was sobbing. I was like, you're getting married on my birthday. And she's like, well, that makes it an even better date. And she goes, oh no, while we're sitting there talking, and it's getting now like midnight, 1 o'clock her time. We're talking, via text. She's like, oh my God, wait a minute. That's not Kelly Cochran's birthday, is it? And I'm like, well, how the hell do I know? And she looks up, she's like, oh God, okay, no, it's June 5th. So Kelly, I know, like they would have changed their wedding date.
Oh, they would have to.
Because it was Kelly Cochran's
because
birthday.
that would be like her getting back at them or something.
So Kelly Cochran is the perpetrator that they worked together. And I mean, their story isn't just a love story for the ages. It's like one of those things I wish everyone would discuss, because it's 2 agencies in 2 different states, 2 jurisdictions, 2 different ways of handling a case, and they fucking got together and put everything aside and goddamn did it.
It's an adventure. I mean, their story, their love story is a true, like a movie adventure. They could make a movie out of it.
They should.
I mean, they really.
I begged them. And here's the thing. Both of these individuals are movie star gorgeous and just naturally beautiful in front of a camera. And I don't mean just beautiful looking. Their heart and soul comes out as soon as you turn a camera on them. You see their soul. You see them. You see the good and these people that are just beautiful, well-rounded, flawed, and yet perfect human beings. They're just amazing, amazing human beings, which is such a trite word, but I don't know how else to describe them. They're stellar, they're spectacular, they're every good adjective I can think. They just want to do good. And they, were approached by a few production companies. I threw ideas at them, like, what if you two worked on cases together? That they liked that idea. The only thing they wanted to do was work together. It didn't have to be in front of a camera. That's how you know they are the people that they are. So I don't think that it mattered if it was filmed. I just think that they are so beautiful and spectacular that it's cheating the world if they're not filmed. Well, that's just my opinion.
Well, but I do think I'm surprised that they haven't approached somebody to try to, or somebody hasn't approached them to try to do a treatment for a movie script. Because I'm
wondering if really, now that they're married, because they were so quiet and secretive. So here's the good news. Laura and Jeremy got married on May 14th of this year, 2021. So what happened was they had, of course, to cancel their wedding in Italy last year because of the pandemic. And Laura was like, she would check, travel sites like on the daily, like, please don't cancel our flight. Please don't cancel. And she knew they were going to have to postpone it. And they did. And here's the salt of the earth people they are. She texts me and says, I can't believe we forgot to tell you. She texted me on Saturday, the 15th, and I'm like, what? You got married yesterday? And she said, Jeremy woke me up this morning and said, oh shit, we forgot to tell Melissa, which was so sweet. Like, who the fuck cares if I know? But since I was one of the only people that knew their original wedding date was June 6th of 2020, and they got married May 14th of 2021, I just thought it was so incredibly sweet they even cared what I thought, especially Jeremy. Like, why would a dude care what some crazy woman in California who, anyway, it was so sweet. And Facebook algorithms still didn't show me.
Yeah, I knew about it on
Mark knew
on the 14th.
I get up on Saturday morning, the 15th, and I go, oh my God, I start crying. Jeremy and Laura got married. And Mark's like, yeah, I know. I saw the pictures yesterday. I'm like, God damn it. Like, I didn't know because I'm friends with both of them. Yeah. And she said, we love you and we love your posts. They make us laugh and make us cry. And I mean, that's like the sweetest thing in the world. So anyway, I made them a wedding present, which I will post. It's part of it is Jeremy's own words to Laura on her bouquet from the flower shop. He wrote a note to her that is just explains him to the core. It's just authentic and real and plain and simple and beautiful. It's perfect. So anyway, the good news is Laura and Jeremy are married.
Mazel tov, kids.
Yeah. And you know what, producer Mark, you might be right. Maybe someone will take interest in their story because it is a story for the ages.
Well, it is. It's. I mean, when we started watching the documentary is really well done.
It is.
It's most of these true crime documentaries are not this well done because I think the producers or the director, whoever, knew that this was more than just the story of this by the way, they stopped one of the rarest things in crime is a female serial killer.
Exactly.
Who was a real menace and a real evil person. And they I mean, when the documentary starts, you get 2/3 of the way through and you're just engrossed in this story about not only about Laura's research and the tenacity she had to she thought from the very beginning that this was going on,
absolutely,
and the bureaucracy she had to
she
fight.
Couldn't get any help.
She couldn't get help. And you're engrossed in all this, and then all of a sudden, in comes this guy, this detective from Indiana,
yeah,
who starts helping.
Here's the thing: he believes her.
Yeah, he believes
her. She couldn't get help from the Michigan State Police. She is the first female chief of police of a small city, Iron City in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula in the UP. And she had 20 years of law enforcement work. Her father she'd gotten this from her dad. It was a family history. And she couldn't get shit.
They treated her like shit.
Yeah, they treated her like shit.
Everybody in her own department, even other female police officials, just treated her like shit. And it was like unbelievable to watch because it was so clear that this deserved more investigation.
It wasn't just a guy who went missing.
Right. No.
We knew it wasn't a guy who just left his life.
And the way she meets Jeremy is through telephone conversations and emailing him all of the evidence she had and him reviewing it in Indiana and then writing back to her saying, well, yeah, this. And
this is the state that Kelly Cochran had lived in. She had, was born and raised in Maryville, Indiana, somewhere in that area. And Jeremy, is a detective in Hobart, a neighboring town. And he looks at what Laura has and he's like, she's right. And he drives to Michigan. He, numerous times. I mean, we don't want to tell you all the details if you haven't seen it because it's so bloody fucking good. And just so you know, they still have contact with Kelly. She's still doing the dance. They believe that she may have up to 14 male victims. She's like a black widow who collects butterfly tattoos on her body. She calls them her friends. And they believe each of her 14 tattoos represent a male victim. So,
she's a creepy person.
Yeah. And she, has written them letters. I mean, Laura would text me and say, this came to the house. Kelly got their address. I guess it's not that hard to do, but she sent a letter to the house saying, I'm ready to talk and here's where some other people are. She has victims in Indiana, West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, more in Michigan, apparently. I mean, if it's true, if she's not just, she seemed to have been, she was really caught between a rock and a hard place. I think she had a huge crush on Jeremy. She connected with him in some weird way, and I think she wanted to be Laura. So I think she...
Ooh, that's an interesting take.
Oh, I think that's the truth, honey. You don't see that?
No,
Sorry,
I do.
I just called you honey. You don't see that, Producer Mark? I'm trying to be professional. You don't see that?
Let's be professional here.
I'm sorry.
Well, darling, I think that is a very interesting take, and it makes a lot of sense.
She was captivated by Jeremy, and he is captivating. He has the most exquisite azure blue eyes that are just like open, and you can see into his soul. And Laura is just like classically beautiful. Just they don't even know. They don't even care. They don't even do anything. They're just like, yep, here we are. They don't do anything to be as exquisite as they are. It's like I hate them because they're so beautiful and they don't even know. If I didn't love them so much, I'd hate them. But I think Kelly was so attached to Jeremy, she wanted to impress him, whether it's like with her body tally or with her work or almost getting away with it. I mean, because she gave them the case. I mean, there's video of them walking through their old house in Iron City. And she's like, yeah, there was that on that counter. And criminalists had gone through that house with a fine tooth comb and missed evidence that connected Kelly to, the eventual murder of, yeah.
We shouldn't talk too much more.
I'll shut up now.
But I will say this. If there's anybody in the industry listening to this podcast,
yeah,
you need to watch that, the documentary.
You do.
And what is it called again?
Dead North.
Dead North. It's an ID Network presentation,
Yep.
and I think you can get it just about anywhere now. Watch that story and tell me that wouldn't make a great movie.
It just should. I know that they were approached by several different production companies. I'll shut up now. Just congratulations to Laura and Jeremy. I just am so happy that they're married. It's just, they got married in downtown Hobart under a beautiful gazebo on what looks like a beautiful Friday in May, and their kids were there and the officiant, and that's about it. I mean, it was pretty small, and yet Jeremy's tie and pocket square are like Jerry Garcia tie worthy. They're like pink and purple. He had a beautiful gray suit, pink and purple, and they pulled this together in 6 days. So, I mean, and she and Laura just looks like a Grecian goddess, just perfection. I have to shut up now. All right. So thank you, Barkley Mom, for suggesting this case, because I was unaware of it, even though it is a 41-year-old case now. And we don't know if it's ever going to be solved, which is why we're covering it, because law enforcement actually put out the word up to 2019. We don't know if this will ever be solved. And we want that to happen. So what happened was Avery Shorts, whose nickname was Peaches, because she was such a beautiful little 6-year-old girl with, as her mom said, a little round head like a peach and beautiful pink cheeks like a peach has that kind of blush. So they called her Peaches. And she was a beautiful little girl. I mean, a beautiful little girl. The pictures of her, when you're 6, there may not be a huge, and this is 1980, a plethora of great pictures, but her school picture is so fascinating to me because she has on a cute little outfit, and it's the thing where you put your hands one on top of each other on top of a carpeted block in front of you, and they take a picture. And this little girl has such a face. She looks like a very old soul in a little 6-year-old body. She is very intense looking. Some kids, when you look back at their school pictures, they're either cute or they're in an awkward stage, or they don't want their picture taken, or, whatever. This little girl looks like she is a CEO of some business already. She's like a 6-year-old with her hands crossed one on top of each other in perfect formation, and she's got on like a green jumper, and she is looking into the camera like, go on, take my picture. I mean, she is an exceptional little girl, and from all accounts was lovely and bubbly and kind. And she ran an errand for her mother, Hazel Smith, who was a divorced mother of 3 and lived in the Montgomery Village housing project in Knoxville. And it was the day after Christmas. It was the 26th of December in 1980. And she had smoked her last cigarette and was getting ready to make dinner. And she said, Peaches, can you run to the store for me and buy me a Coke? And it was cold, obviously. It's the day after Christmas. She buttoned Peaches' overcoat all the way up to her neck, made sure her Mickey Mouse tennis shoes were tied tightly so they wouldn't come off, and gave her 58 cents and sent her to the store not far away. Now, it was a 15-minute trip, round trip. And after a few minutes of her being late, Hazel's like, I don't know what's going on, but I need to find her. She calls the store. The store says she was here. She bought the Coke and she left. And it's now 50 minutes later, and she calls the police, and they are on it. And I will tell you, there's great coverage of this story from WBIR. A journalist named Mark Salinger did a wonderful job. The most comprehensive, and I can't help but think he is partially responsible for reopening the case, and I'll explain why. The most comprehensive coverage of the case is from knoxnews.com, a journalist named Matt Lakin. And I believe it's him. I believe he is the reason that the case was reopened in 2010. And I'll explain that. So 50 minutes after Peaches has left the apartment in Montgomery Village, she calls the police, and they are on it. It's now getting to be dark because it's winter. They search overnight. By 9 p.m., there's 100 people looking for this little girl. They search overnight.
Wow.
Yeah. They search everywhere. Now, the part that breaks my heart a little bit is Detective James Winston saw the story on the news the 26th of December, and it was not handed to him to cover until the following day. And this makes him angry. He's like, I feel like if I had been able to come in and lead this case earlier, we may have had a little bit more success. But you can't look back now, right?
Yeah.
I will tell you that there is an interview from 2019 with retired Detective James Winston, and I considered playing it, but I cannot because it's 3 minutes and 18 seconds long, and I will cry because this is a man who, when you look at him talking about this case, this old, grizzled, retired detective, they always say that, all detectives have one case that they either didn't solve or that they did solve that was the case of their lifetime. And this is the case that I think has left him broken. He had a 40-year career in law enforcement in Knoxville, and I don't think he can talk about this case without his throat having a catch. I feel like he's wearing, in this interview, a plaid shirt, and you can see a crack in his heart. I feel like you can see through his shirt. So I didn't want to play the interview with retired Detective James Winston because it would make me cry. But I can't talk about him talking about the case without crying. If you can find it online, which you can, it was on USA Today online. Like I said, it's 3 minutes and 18 seconds where he is recounting what happened, and you can tell it is the case of his career. And it isn't just him. You'll hear a medical examiner, so we know that she was found 13 months later. But the medical examiner keeps slides of her case, and he has done over 700 cases in his career, but it's the one that sticks with him. So Peaches is a special little girl, which is exactly the way Detective Winston describes her, is a special girl. And this case, in 1980, got a lot of coverage from far away, not just in Tennessee, but the Kingsport Times-News, the Leaf Chronicle, the Longview News Journal in Longview, Texas, the Atlanta Constitution, the Clarion Ledger in Mississippi. I found an article from Sapulpa, Oklahoma, which I've never heard of that city.
No, I've never heard of it either.
I know, but they had a very good publication that covered the story all the way in Oklahoma. There was a lot of coverage of this story. Also, it was on, like close to the time of the Atlanta child murders. All of that was going on. And then not long after Peaches went missing, Adam Walsh went missing. And, so Peaches' case was covered. And I'm telling you, this detective is like and he's not like defending what happened. In fact, like I said, he said, I wish I'd gotten the case earlier. And he said at one point there were 12 detectives from the Knoxville PD, all working on this. They had a January 1 search that encompassed a 50 square mile area of Knox County. 50 square miles, days of 300 people looking for Peaches.
Wow.
They found pants and a jacket near her home, near a quarry. The searchers found that, but they were determined to be not the right size, and they weren't recognized by Hazel Smith as being and belonging to Peaches. She remembers what she had on. At another quarry, they found a pair of girls' pants and an unopened bottle of Coke near a railroad track. There were no fingerprints on the Coke, but they believe that was the Coke that Peaches had purchased for her mother. So 13 months later, on January 23rd of 1982, a father and son are hunting rabbits near the University of Tennessee Extension Farm, which is off of Singleton Station Road in Blount County. Next to the skull, there are a pair of Mickey Mouse tennis shoes, and there's an overturned cattle chute. Now, I looked up exactly why a cattle chute would be there, but it's the University of Tennessee Extension Farm, and a cattle chute is where you put an animal in with one way in and one way out, and they can't turn around. You can do veterinary work on them, etc. So there's an overturned, old, unused cattle chute. And Knoxville PD investigator Randy York, also now retired, remembers, well, we saw the shoes and we pushed on the cattle chute, and there was her little body with a wire wrapped around her neck. Her pigtails were where her head would have been. Her hair still had the ribbons in it that her mother put in for her.
Oh, my God.
She still had her panties on, and her little coat was buttoned all the way to the top, which is exactly what Hazel said that she had done before she left. So Dr. Bill Bass, who was a forensic anthropologist who worked with Knoxville PD, identified Peach's bones with help from her parents, and he is the one who has kept slides of her case. He said, they found a skull, they wanted me to identify it, and I have done over 700 cases. You don't remember all 700, but I remember Peach's shorts. I mean, he still keeps slides of her case because he knows it needs to be solved. And he said, I just remember seeing pictures of this rosy-cheeked 6-year-old girl. It's stitched into my memory forever. He keeps these slides on his desk, and he remembers that a wire from a fence at the University of Tennessee was found tied around her neck. And that was a wire that was manufactured in the 1940s. So apparently it had been on the property for a long time, because this is December of 1980, January of 1982 when she is found. So what Detective James Winston believes, even though he is no longer, he's retired and he was no longer on the case, he wouldn't give up. He worked on the case on his off hours because he just felt, I know who did this. And what he feels, he doesn't feel it was a sexual assault. He feels it was Hazel Smith's sometime boyfriend, Mitchell Reed. Now, here's the other uncomfortable thing. Mitchell Reed had asked Hazel Smith if he could move in with her into her apartment in Montgomery Village. Now, he had asked her twice, and she had said no. Now, in the months before Peaches went missing, and he's, she's very young. She's in her early 20s, and he's 47 at the time. And he, is like, hey, he has a girlfriend that he lives with in the same complex and another girl on the side. He was,
okay.
He's a con man, quite frankly. You'll see in his history of what he has done. But he had an old brown Cadillac that was very impressive, and he would drive Hazel's kids around and Hazel in his car. So when they find Peach's DNA in the car, that can be explained away. Hazel believes that Peaches was smart and savvy and would never have gotten in a car with a stranger. This was a 7-minute walk one way to the store with 58 cents in her pocket to get a Coke. And the 58 cents, unfortunately, had come earlier from Mitchell Reed. He had stopped by Hazel's apartment and said, let me move in. And she said, let me think about it. I need some time. Now, he had found out that she had been out with another man the night before, and he didn't take that very well. And she's like, look, you have a girlfriend and another girlfriend. We don't have any sort of relationship where we're not allowed to see other people, and I think that he was trying to get his way into her life by saying, I'll help support you. I mean, this is a man with a lifetime of criminal behavior back to when he was 15 years old. He had just been in and out of prison, and, he didn't really ever have a solid life. But, she's a young divorced mother in her early 20s with 3 kids, and Peaches is her oldest. She said she was my pride and joy, and I'm sure she was. And she said, as she's smoking her last cigarette before she starts dinner, she says to Mitchell Reed, "I need time to think about it. Can I have money for a Coke?" He reaches in his pocket and throws 58 cents on the counter and stomps out. So Hazel finishes her last cigarette and asks her daughter Peaches to walk to the store. And Peaches never returns, even though she made it to the store with 58 cents, bought her mother the Coke, and headed home. And unfortunately, Mitchell Reed was at the same store. At first he denied it, and then he said, oh yeah, I remember being there. I bought a cup of coffee, and then I left. I didn't see Peaches. Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
A young boy had told his parents he had seen Peaches in Mitchell Reed's brown Cadillac and was ready to testify, and he recanted. And the police believed that his parents got him to recant because they were afraid of retaliation by Mitchell Reed.
Oh, for God. Oh.
So they have not a lot of evidence. They have a con man who enjoys being questioned by the police. I mean, he's a complete and utter sociopath. They talk to him so many times. His story changes all of the time. And Peach's body was a 15-minute drive from the Montgomery Village Housing Project and a mile outside of Rockford, which is where Mitchell Reed would occasionally stay with his parents. There's not much you can get from a small body that has been outside for 13 months, that's highly decomposed, and then a rusty 9-gauge piece of wire. There's not a lot of forensics that you can get. So they had talked to Mitchell Reed numerous times and then found out that he had been questioned just a year before in the death of 62-year-old Emma Brewer in her home, in her own home, in her apartment. She had been strangled and robbed, but they couldn't file any charges against him because they didn't have enough evidence. It's interesting to me that Peaches is also strangled. And what Detective Winston believes is that she was strangled with Mitchell Reed's hands, and then he dumped her body under the cattle chute and took the wire and strangled her just to make sure she's dead.
Wonderful. Wow. That's just horrific.
It is horrific, and they believe, like I said, that it has no sexual component, that it was just to get back at Hazel.
Yeah, that's the only reason. There's no other reason, because she had other kids, right?
She had 2 younger kids.
So it wasn't like he was doing it so that he could get rid of the kids so that she would let him move in.
No.
It was just because he was pissed off.
He was angry at her. He was angry at her for not letting him move in with him. And yeah. Detective Winston said he just loved being the center of attention. He was always smoking and grinning, and life was just a big con game to him. You could tell by the gleam in his eye. He would talk for hours about his life, his criminal record, but he would never admit to hurting a child. Even scent dogs found Peach's scent in his car. But it's like, oh, no, she rode in my car. That's why she'd be there. Now, this is an interesting piece of information. He'd refused a polygraph because he said, I won't be hooked up to machines. If I'm lying in the hospital, I'm dying, I'm not going to let them hook me up to a machine. Well, future self, he is in a nursing home before he dies, and he is hooked up to a machine quite often for oxygen and etc. And he lets them do that.
Right.
Yeah. So they question him about Emma Brewer, and he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. No, I'm also not going to do a polygraph about that either. Nope, I don't know what you're talking about. So why I think Matt Lakin is kind of responsible for this case getting a little more attention, and God bless him and his timing, because Mitchell Reed ironically died Christmas Eve of 2010, 2 days before, what happened in 1980 to Peaches the day after Christmas. Matt Lakin finds Mitchell Reed at the NHC Healthcare nursing home in Fort Sanders, and he's on a breathing machine. He can't stand up on his own, but he will not give up the cigarettes that he holds in his hands all the time. He can't remember his age. He can't remember his birthday. But the second you say the name Peaches, he remembers, oh, I knew Peaches. I can't say I didn't because I did. Whatever happened to her?
Oh, man. What a cocksucker.
He's absolutely that.
Honest to God.
He's absolutely that. But if you think journalists aren't important, I just want you to know Matt Lakin found him at a nursing home when the police thought that he had been dead for years. They did not know he was still alive. So they reopened the case in 2010. And they try really hard to get as much information. They go back over the case. James Winston volunteers his help. It's like, I feel like for all intents and purposes, we solved this case. We just couldn't put him away. We tried so hard to get justice for that little girl. And you can see in James Winston's face, he's broken. This case broke him. So Mitchell Reed has dementia. He's like, no, I didn't do anything. He says when Matt Lakin, the journalist, brings up Emma Brewer, no, I don't think I knew. No, I don't even remember that name. And then says, oh, yeah, I was at that house.
Just out of the blue.
Which, when someone's in a nursing home, I have to say the picture of him sitting in a wheelchair smoking makes me want to throw up, because he's got that, I don't know how else to say it. He has a shit-eating grin on his face. He has a shit-eating grin on his face with a cigarette in his hand, sitting in a wheelchair at a nursing home smoking. And I mean, they just really believe that it was a vindictive, shitty thing to kill a child to get back at Hazel for not letting him live there. Now, in the meantime, Mitchell Reed has married a woman named Mary, who lived in the same complex, Montgomery Village. And she says, he never told me if he did it. I guess if he did it, he knows it and God knows it. I can tell you that Mary Reed took a lie detector test and she passed. So, whether she's able to pass a lie detector test or whether she really doesn't know, or, I don't know. All I know is they have tried everything they can to get the information from anyone who knows Mitchell Reed. And the thing that Mary Reed says is, everyone thought he'd die an old man in prison, but I guess he's an old man who's going to die in a nursing home.
What's that, sort of like nanny poo-poo?
Sounds like it to me.
Good grief. Sounds like he found his match.
Yeah, I guess it's good that they were together and not fucking up two normal people's lives, So they just didn't have enough physical evidence to connect Reed to Peach's murder. And they just try hard not to give up, but they don't know where to go. And Detective Winston said, he beat the system. I guess you'd have to say he beat the system. We couldn't break him, and he was a really sly con man. But I believe there's someone who knows something. I don't care what it is. If someone told you something, and I know it's 41 years later, but if you ever heard a story about someone who did something terrible, if you know anything about what really happened to Avery Peaches Shorts, please contact the Knoxville Police Department at 215-7317. And more cowbell.
If you'd like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/Just the Tipsters.